Hi, and welcome to our webinar on Doing More with Less, sponsored by the Lewis University Alumni Association in partnership with the Organizational Leadership Program. My name is Joe Volan, and I'm one of the Assistant Directors of Alumni Relations here at Lewis. And I'd like to start off by thanking our speakers for being here to share some insights on this very important topic. Jason Stubler, Sandy Mikulcik, and Terry Arya. Throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, please feel free to email us at alumni@lewisu.edu. That's alumni@lewisu.edu. Thank you. Enjoy the webinar.
My name is Jason Stubler. I graduated in the Organizational Leadership Program in May of 2013.
Hi, my name is Sandy Mikulcik, and I graduated from the Master's in Organizational Leadership Program this past December. Most recently, I was a treasurer and board member for Legatus, which is a Catholic organization for business leaders.
And hi, everyone. This is Terry Arya.
Hi,
I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Christian Brothers Services. I just got my master's in organizational leadership this past August, and I'm happy to be here today. Thank you.
In preparing for this topic, I wanted to first find some good news about the nonprofit sector, and Giving USA, in their annual report on philanthropy, approximated that $335 billion was given to charities in the United States in 2014, which is the fourth year in a row of growth. So giving levels are almost back to 2007, before the Great Recession hit. The not so great news is that demand is still very high. According to the 2014 State of the Nonprofit Sector Survey, 80% of respondents reported an increase in demand for services, and 56% of the respondents were unable to meet demand in 2013. From my own experience, I can attest that many nonprofits are still struggling to do more with less. My church, in fact, just sent out a notice in our bulletin that collections are down 6%, and the schools my daughters attend are challenged every year to maintain a balanced budget due to huge cuts and delays in state funding. In my experience, nonprofit leaders that consistently do more with less do three things very well. They foster an environment of open communication, they build relationships, and they develop creative, collaborative solutions. The former superintendent of my daughter's school is an excellent example of an administrator who created this type of open environment. She opened up conversations with the community. The state has repeatedly cut funds to the school district, so the administration is challenged to keep academic standards high with less money per pupil. When she started the job, she made it very clear that the first thing she would change was the lack of clear communication. She sent out emails, meeting dates, budget proposals. She said, "I need your help." She wanted the parents in the community to come together with some ideas so that they didn't have to cut core academic and athletic programs. We all had a stake in the school system. It took her time and energy, but a huge respect developed between the community and the administration. When the district was faced with cutting the middle school soccer program, she held several meetings. They're always risky. There were some angry parents, but because her style was open and honest, they realized that she would listen to alternate ideas. And because of this parent and community input, the middle school soccer program was saved. They came up with a creative solution that was a win for the students. A public-private partnership developed between the district and an area athletic association. The school provided the coach and the location, and the athletic administration handled all the paperwork and the administering of the program for a nominal fee to the parents. So it was a win-win situation. Through openness and collaboration, the district has been able to remain a top school district and expand opportunities with limited and decreasing funds. And this is in contrast to the school district my husband and I left because they unilaterally cut music, art, and lunch from the school day. So property values have gone down in that community and the school is struggling. Throughout the master's program, I was challenged to think about who I am as a leader, what values I stand for, what my strengths are, and how I'm perceived by others. I went into the master's program hoping that in the end I would know how to be a great, confident leader with all the answers. But what I learned is that great leaders do not have to have all the answers. They just need to ask the right people and ask for help. Good leaders know how to listen attentively, build relationships, and amplify others' strengths and abilities to come up with collaborative solutions. I was able to use some of these leadership skills when I was asked to be a board member for a local nonprofit. I quickly realized that they were facing a crisis. Membership had been declining for the past 5 years, and event costs were rising. This particular chapter was going to run out of money within a year if the board didn't act. We had several strategic planning sessions, which garnered some good ideas, but months would go by without action. We would talk over the same issues and agree that something needed to be done, but with 10 board members, it was difficult to get agreement on a course of action. I felt that it was extremely important to take this issue to the entire membership. The members had no idea that the chapter was in risk of closing, and to grow, we needed energized members who would bring friends to the events. It took several months of persistence, but we were able to convince the board of this idea. They didn't want to bother members on their night out, but surveys hadn't yielded any responses, so we couldn't get changed. So we decided the best approach was to have each board member sit at a table with the other members and engage them in a conversation about the future of the chapter. The members were so excited to share their ideas, to share their opinions, to offer ways to make the chapter better, and they were excited. So out of this one night, we got several conclusions: that the restaurant we had gone to, the food was terrible and people were embarrassed to bring their guests, and that they would prefer to have less speakers and more opportunity to build relationships with the other members. So some of our assumptions were wrong. We assumed that more expensive speakers would make a better event, but it turned out by listening to our members, we were able to have a few less speakers and have a topic of discussion that everybody could talk to. So we were able to save money by going to a different restaurant, lower cost, more intimate setting, and plan fewer speakers throughout the year. So we were able to save through these small initiatives. Now the chapter still has a ways to go to be financially solid again, but sometimes acting on simple things can drive some of the change that is needed. We asked the members and listened for their input and included them in the planning process. I can't emphasize enough that people want to be asked, and taking the time to have one-on-one conversations with a staff member, a volunteer, a member, or a donor can be powerful. We are now able to provide a better experience for less money because we listen to our members. My favorite class through the master's program was adult development, and in this class I learned a lot about leveraging my own strengths as well as other people's strengths. Another way to do more with less in a nonprofit setting is to make sure your organization is leveraging the strengths of its volunteers. As a volunteer, I know there's a lot of improvement that can be made in this area. I believe a lot of highly skilled volunteers aren't being utilized to their fullest extent. As an example, my husband volunteered during his lunch hour once a week at an organization near his office. He's a very talented statistician. They started him doing data entry, and he expressed on several occasions that he could help analyze their data, build models, use statistics to help them. But they never utilized his skills. So he eventually became frustrated and left. And I hear these stories all the time. I think that every nonprofit should have a volunteer manager who can build relationships with volunteers and understand their strengths so that they can best serve the organization. Don't miss opportunities to find out what your volunteers want to do and like to do and ask for their input. You never know where a new or creative idea will come from. Retaining and having happy, committed volunteers will help the organization succeed. In addition to communicating regularly, leveraging volunteer strengths, and appointing a volunteer manager, I think nonprofits would benefit from integrating some positive psychology principles into the workplace. I did a lot of research on my capstone on positive psychology. And positive emotions such as hope, joy, gratitude, interest, inspiration, and pride are emotions that can be triggered and sustained by supportive organizational environments. I think people who work in a positive, supportive environment will be able to do more with less. Thank you.
My name is Jason Stubler. I'm the second presenter here, and I'm a police officer in a Chicago Suburban Police Department. We're going to talk a lot about what affects the public sector and what has impacted my job and what I've learned going through the Masters of Organizational Leadership program. One of the biggest things for a police department is its budget. And the budget is consisted of tax dollars, which is funded by the taxpayers of where we work at, or from the state of Illinois. It's comprised of several different pots of money, but the budget has to be adhered to and must be balanced each and every year. Therefore, as we had seen in recent years, we had the recession back in 2009 where tax dollars had gone down, we didn't have the same amount of funding, and there was ways that you had to change what was going to go on. So what costs money in a police department? It's personnel, equipment, and services that we offer. So services being a community program, equipment being police cars or vehicle fleet, and then you go to personnel, which is actually the largest expense in a police department. It actually consists generally between 75 and 85% of your total budget is personnel. So the recession several years back caused the urgency for change. Things had to change. There was no way to consistently do what we were on the path of doing with the amount of personnel that we had and how much money we had. So there was money, so we had to change that. And there was a definite urgency of what we had to do. It was a big wake-up call for us because we certainly couldn't keep doing police service the way we wanted to. So our leaders sat down and tried to clarify what was going to be our role as a police department for our community. What were the services that we were going to offer, and what were the essential services that we could not eliminate. So after we clarified our vision, we built networks with private sector people, nonprofits, volunteers, and after you network, you build those relationships and establish a role for what they can play in not only in the private sector but in the public sector or a nonprofit. Where can we build that relationship so we can all work together and find our end goals? And once you ask more of your employees, one of the common complaints is you give an inch, they take a mile. So rather than trying to take from the employees, empower the employees to have more responsibility, to have more of a role in what their daily job is. A good quote I found on change is by John F. Kennedy: "Change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future." One of the most important things is you always must raise the standards over the minimum. And in the public sector, the status quo, we have always done it this way, is no longer an acceptable practice. I'm going to look at just the organizational level here. We can go on all day about the operational level, but due to the time, we're just going to look at the organizational level. There's better ways to get and keep good people. There's better ways to build your policy manual. There's better ways to train your personnel. There's better ways to supervise and better ways to discipline errant employees. Each one of those 5 points I just read there are all points where we can constantly work to find a better way to do something. There's better ways to train people, whether it's through an online format, a webinar, a class, in-house training people. Can you go develop an instructor and have him teach in-house versus sending all your personnel to an outside training class that would cost several thousands of dollars versus doing it in-house? You don't have to pay for all the travel costs associated with it. So there's different ways to look at different things. Continuous improvement has got to be part of the way we do business now. And one of the quotes I've heard a long time ago, I do not know who quoted this, but this is one that I've always lived by for about the past decade now, is the smartest man or woman in the room is the person that finds the 15th way to hold 2 pieces of paper together. When I first heard this quote, I thought confusion because I didn't really know what it means. But we always have to be seeking that 15th way to hold 2 pieces of paper together. That 15th way is impossible, but you always must strive for it. And as long as we're striving for that 15th way, we're going to find better ways to do things. Back in 2009, we were laying off personnel, not only through attrition, but we actually sent bodies of police officers home. One of the most painful times in my law enforcement career. And to see your coworkers go home and the budget completely shattered. Not do anything anymore. It became difficult, but that was a point when I had personally stepped up in my career, and I was in traffic safety at the point and wanted to do a program on seatbelt, and I wanted to engage our local high school students. So what I did was, I was told I had no money, but I could go ahead with the program. And to get the money, I needed money to proceed forward with the program. And basically, my leaders above me said, "Go ahead, you can do what you can to make this program work." And what I did is I went out and sought 6 different donors through the private sector, insurance companies, car dealerships, a graphics company, and a group of volunteers that we have. They actually donated money to make this program work. And basically what it was the students from 3 different high schools were to create a seatbelt sign using their school colors and their school logo that would eventually be, the winner would be selected, and all these signs would be posted at the exits to all the high schools. And it was kind of a way for the students to get involved, the police department to get involved, the community to get involved, and it worked. And we actually announced all 3 winners. I remember I walked into the police chief's office, and I said, "Hey," I said, "our winner announcement and the press is downstairs for a little media event in the police department. I'd like you to come down and present." And he walked down, and this is just about a week after he had laid off 6 police officers and was having enough troubles managing the budget. And he walked in and saw the media, school personnel, school superintendents, principals, the students, parents, and the volunteers, and all the people from the donors of the program. They were in there, and the chief had one of the biggest smiles I've ever seen on his face. He was happy because we wound up doing more with less. We took the change of the budget and we turned it into something very positive and something different that's never been done before. We worked with partners that we had never partnered with before. We worked with different groups we had never worked with before, and it really made it a successful event. And basically what happened was we did a seatbelt survey, per se, of students leaving the high school parking lot to see what percentage of them was wearing a seatbelt. And I think after about a 3-month period, and after this program was all done and in place, we raised seatbelt use by high school students by about 6% in a 90-day period without writing one seatbelt ticket. And through that and just an educational event and awareness thing, that was a real positive thing in my career. And if you have any questions, feel free to send them to the email that Joe had pointed out before. That concludes my presentation, and I'll turn it over to Terry.
Thank you, Jason, and hello again, everyone. I'm Terry Arya, the Chief Marketing Officer at Christian Brothers Services. I've had about 25 to 30 years of experience in both the profit and nonprofit worlds, always working in a marketing, communications, or public relations capacity. And I've seen plenty of doing more with less stories in that time, so I'm happy to be here today to share some of those with you. Now, often we're faced with the challenge of doing more with less, and regardless of your position or your industry or even how many years of service that you've put in at an organization, that really boils down to delivering more, producing more, or doing more with less time, less money, fewer staff, or less of other resources in general. So I wanted to share 4 more with less tips that I have found personally helpful over my career. You've heard from Jason about the public sector and from Sandy about the nonprofit perspectives that she shared, and now I'll address more of those big picture or overall tips and stories. So my first and number 1 tip is that your network is gold and you really want to work it. So your network is truly one of your top assets, and we've heard this a little bit from both Sandy and Jason already, so you can tell this is a big common thread in our presentation today. And my advice is don't just have a network, but be a champ at working your network. And this applies whether you have 20 people in your network or 800 people. You really want to stay connected with everyone that you have a significant meeting with or an experience with, any type of meaningful encounter. So stay connected with people. Just reach out to them occasionally, and you can share articles about common interests. You can introduce people who you think could help each other or pass along helpful resources or even current governance changes that impact what you do. So some of the ways that I stay connected with my peer network are if I have an inspiring idea that I know some of my marketing colleagues could benefit from, I'll share it. Or if I've just read a business book that I know someone would love, I'll email them a few quotes from the book, or I'll even give them my copy when I'm done. If I know a company is looking for freelance help, I'll take the time to inform my peers that do freelance work about those opportunities. So those are just some ways. People want to know how do you stay connected? What does that mean? What does that involve? It's just those little examples that you think of in the process of a day, but act on those thoughts and use them as ways to keep your network strong and alive through your career. And I've gotten low to no cost help in areas like training, consulting, and mentoring through my network. I've landed jobs thanks to my network, and I have joined clubs and tried things that I would have never tried, and I've grown tremendously, all from building and working my network. So the bottom line really is that people like helping their peers. It makes you feel good to help a coworker or a friend or a peer, and in the process a company. So remember, your network is gold, and I strongly recommend LinkedIn as your platform for staying connected, because unlike any other type of contact organizer, LinkedIn keeps up with people's contact information through their career transitions. So I can find someone I worked with 5 years ago if I've connected with them through LinkedIn. Okay, next slide. My number 2 tip is to increase your capacity through organization and time management. You probably know people who just seem to have more capacity, or they appear to be able to do more in their day than others. They turn things around faster and seem less stressed. And I know their secret. They are pros at organization and time management. So really focus on having an effective organization and time management system and use it without fail. And observe how others stay organized and managed. I find this fascinating, and I'm always observing how people are staying organized and managed. Maybe they're using calendars or lists, planners. Some use Post-its. Others have more advanced software programs. But everyone has a system that works for them. And I wanted just to share with you a little bit about my system, because I think it's pretty basic, yet I feel it's really at the core of my success. It's kind of a 1-2 punch of a calendar and a Word document. Now I use my calendar, whether it's a Microsoft Office or Lotus Notes calendar. I'm sure you've all got one. But I use my calendar so that people know when I'm available for meetings. And then more importantly, I use a Word document that I keep scrolling throughout the day. I live in this Word document, and that document is my make it or break it piece every day. It allows me to juggle multiple projects, to never skip a beat or miss a detail. It allows me to kind of cut and paste tasks between days, weeks, and years. So I just want to show you what that document looks like. If we could advance to the next slide, please. So when this list comes up, you'll see how I organize my day. I've got it chunked by day, and then the in highlights, I block out what my absolute appointments or meetings are. I think the slides are still catching up. If we could advance to the list slide. If not, I'll just keep talking through it and share it with you later. And then after my hard and fast appointments, I always have a few bullet points of things and tasks that I have to fit in around that throughout the day. So for example, one of the things I still need to do yet today is to draft an article about a new chairperson. So after I do that, that doesn't just get peeled off my list and deleted, but instead I'm putting it back on my to-do list on another day or another week in a new format. So I know my next step with that is really the proofing stage. So I'll re-enter it as have that article about the new chairman proofed. So nothing is ever completely coming off my to-do list, but rather I'm adding in what the next step in the process is. And when people say, how are you so detail-oriented? How are you so organized? How are you finding more minutes in a day than I am? It's because of the system and keeping that list and refreshing it every hour of every day. And it's just a basic Word document like you're seeing. Okay, we're going to go on to the third tip in the next slide. Tip number 3, which is stop and think, how can I work smarter and not harder? Here, you just want to save yourself, time and money with everything you do just by stopping. Just first pausing and thinking, how can I do this so that I'm working smarter and not harder? And you just want to, get in the habit and watch yourself do more with less every day when you get into this habit. And some examples of how this has applied to me recently is, I know right now that I have more writing assignments than staff hours. So I've stopped and I've thought, okay, how can I work smarter, not harder? And I'm going to have an intern draft the outlines and first drafts so that the writers have a leg up on their assignments. And that's just working smarter and not harder. And that was just taking a breath, taking a pause, and thinking, how am I going to do this? Another example, just last week I hosted a work reception at a hotel when I found out that a coworker in another hotel needed a manual that was in my bag. And instead of thinking, oh, I've got to stop and run over to that hotel, I just paused and thought, how can I work smarter and not harder? And I thought I could contact the hotel staff. They could surely have someone who could run that manual across the street for me. And they did, and for the price of a small, tip, I could get that done. So it's really a mindset. But I find that really effective organizational leaders and people who are able to do more with less have this mindset. It's a way of leadership, a personal style, and a big stress relief. So be sure and stop regularly and think, how can I work smarter and not harder? The next slide, which is tip number 4, the power of positivity. This really ties in nicely to what Sandy was saying about how attitude is really everything in this world. People that are successful at doing more with less generally have a very positive attitude. And this makes me think of an old Cherokee Indian story about the internal battle in all of us, which is the battle of 2 internal wolves. And one wolf in us is positive and thinks, I can do this, and has a let's make it happen mentality and excitement about them. And the other wolf in us is more stressed and thinks, oh, it's too much, or there's too many time constraints, there's just no way, or I'm too frazzled, or I don't have the resources. So these 2 wolves are in each of us, and which wolf wins the battle every single time? It's the wolf that you feed. So the point is, you want to keep feeding your positive thoughts. Feed yourself on the can do, make it happen, let's do this thoughts, and get excited about your work and the opportunities, and then you'll get it done. It's a great tip on how to do more with less. So to bring it back full circle, and in conclusion, tying back to my first point about working your network, I encourage you all to stay connected with me and the other speakers. Our email addresses and contact information are being shared, so we really hope that you do connect with us. Again, remember, I strongly encourage LinkedIn. That's my personal favorite. So please feel free to find me on LinkedIn and each other on LinkedIn. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you so much. So we have 3 questions that came in, one for each of our presenters, and the first question will be for Sandy. Sandy, Emma in Evanston had a question. She said, as a volunteer manager, how would you build rapport between volunteers and other staff members at your organization?
Hi, Emma. Thanks for your question. I worked for an organization, and they would have coffee chats in the morning where they would invite volunteers and the staff members to kind of interact together. And another thing I've seen is a board with pictures of the staff members and pictures of the volunteers so that you know who you're seeing around, and just inviting volunteers and staff members to different events so they can get to know each other, and then having volunteers rotate and do different assignments for different staff members, I think would help build rapport. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. And our second question is for Jason. It comes from Christina in Chicago. Christina asked, how did they empower the police personnel through that change at your department?
Christina, thanks for your question. When that change came through, I was already kind of working on that project, and when they told me, hey, there's no money in the budget, I had to find another way to do it. And basically what I did was I kind of drafted up a proposal of what I wanted to do, and I presented to my boss at first. I said, hey, we got no money, but I would like to seek some other options, and the bosses were good with that, and they said, go with it. And I think a lot of that comes through trust in the work that you have in your superiors and the trust that they have in their subordinates. And trust is an important part of leadership in general. If you don't have trust in other people, it's very hard to lead an organization or anything else for that matter. But you'll find trust, and there's a lot of good books out there on trust in organizations and how important that is to relationships between employees and bosses and vice versa. If there's no trust, you're not going to have good leadership. And in this case, we had a tremendous amount of trust in our unit that I was working at the time. And after I had presented it, you know, obviously they don't want me going out seeking, you know, $2 million to do a program they don't know anything about. So it's only fair for me to let them know what I was doing. And, you know, it was, you know, a very small amount of money, but it needed to be enough to make it impactful and worthwhile. And I found that, you know, the trust was a big issue in empowering the employees to make a program like that happen. Hope that answers your question. Thanks for asking.
Thank you. And our last question is for Terry. It comes from Tim in Downers Grove. Terry, Tim asked, what challenges have you faced in managing that balance between accomplishing your work, but also finding time to network and to expand your network?
Hi, Tim. Thanks for your question. That's a great question, and I think it's something that just about everyone faces, is that challenge. I think it's important to make time and build that into your calendar, because that networking time is crucial to your career and your current job. So when opportunities come up, I just block it on my calendar like any other meeting. Find time, make time, keep those commitments, and know that that's really part of your job and your career, is all that networking time that it takes, and that's really enriching what you're doing and what you will be doing in your career. So it's just fitting it in like everything else.
Thank you so much to all of our presenters for all of that fine information, and thank you to those that submitted questions. We hope that you enjoyed this webinar. Just a couple of upcoming events to place on your calendar here at Lewis is next Wednesday. We will be having a networking event that will actually be in Chicago at Fado Irish Pub and Grill. September 12th, 2015, we return to the Palmer House for our annual Red Tie Ball. And on October 9th, 2015, we will have our second Celebrating Women in Leadership Conference right here on our campus in Romeoville. For more information on those events and all of the rest of the events that we plan and sponsor on behalf of the Alumni Association, please visit alumni.lewisu.edu. Thank you and have a great day.